The new season for Imaginarium Theatre for version 5.1 has just dropped, so let us go over the things that you can do to make your clears much easier. Now for this video, I'm going to explain the basics assuming that you have zero idea on how things are going to work, so feel free to skip to this specific timestamp if you already know what to do. For starters, we have 6 main casts which are essentially characters that meet the elemental requirement and they have to be used regardless of whether you have them or not. You can opt to use your own build character or you can use the trial one that is provided to you. If you don't have enough characters, you can invite one supporting cast from your in-game friends. My recommendation is to go find someone or an account that has a very highly invested characters and preferably try to choose the ones that are very well invested, preferably with high constellations, with refinements on their weapons or even the 5-star weapon. Now, the number of bosses actually differs on which mode you select, from having to deal with 1 boss in easy mode all the way to 4 bosses in visionary. If you were to have extra characters past the minimum character requirement for the different modes, you will gain buffs to these following stats: max HP, attack, defense, and elemental mastery. So easier modes will have weaker enemies with a lower level, and the logic would apply vice versa for the harder ones. If you want to know what kind of brilliant blessings you have, or what casts you have, or what battles that you are at right now, you can press this tab right here to see so that you can figure out and plan around it. And lastly, the stars are extra challenges. They are purely for flexing and they are not needed to get the Primo Gem rewards. Now, here's a quick visualization on how the format is going to be, so feel free to pause the section so that you can figure this out and plan around it. Now, a quick disclaimer. I'm going to assume that you have enough characters built based on your respective modes, and I will only be explaining that basic section for the first time only in this video. For any future theater guides, I'm going to assume that you know all these facts by default. So, while most of these tips are for the visionary mode, all of them can be used to all the different modes regardless. And I'm also going to assume that you know how the gameplay goes, so I'm not going to waste my time explaining the small details. For the new season of Imaginarium Theatre, the elements are Pyro, Electro, and Dendro. Your possible reactions are Overloaded, Burning, and Quicken, of which Quicken is broken down into Aggravate and Spread. The opening characters are Klee, Shinyen, Yaemiko, Dori, Tanari, and Kirara, and the special guest stars that you can use without caring about the elemental restriction are Xilonen, Chiori, Xingqiu, and Layla. Of course, these guest stars have to be characters that you own and not otherwise. Now, in terms of character recommendations, I think most characters are pretty good. Some are kind of meh, but I think the most notable one by far is probably Tinari and Amber, mostly for their ability to taunt, because there was one time where in my initial run, I actually had to use both Tinari and Amber in this one team, and their ability to taunt enemies away from the monolith is quite useful, so that's something that I can recommend. Otherwise, obviously Chevreau is going to be really good, and a lot of the other supports are going to be useful in a lot of different ways, but I don't think any of the battles are going to be difficult enough for you to really try to scrounge your brain up to figure out an amazing strategy to clear this. Otherwise, I think the Imaginarium Theatre is relatively easy. Now, for the general tips, getting the companion random event to get more characters is generally always good. So I would recommend to prioritize the ones that will fit your future needs based on your current cast. Try to select characters based on the future battles, and you can press that tab that I mentioned previously to see what act that you're going to be dealing with, so you can figure out whether you want to bring this character against this boss or you want to bring this character against the defense monolith thing. So with this in mind, try not to overspend your flowers on the companion invites, since you will be wasting the free companion select that you get after clearing every act. From my personal experience, you would be able to get all 26 characters on visionary mode by the time you reach Act 8, which means you still have at least Act 9 and Act 10 to go. So you can probably save up to 160 flowers if you just select until you know that you have 2 more characters left that you can kind of choose. And keep in mind, the minimum requirement is the minimum amount of characters you need to clear every single act with the bigger system in mind, so try to plan around it. So the Brilliant Blessings can buff your team morale quite a bit, although they are restricted to the specific reactions. My personal recommendation is to choose the blessings that will be in favor of your weaker teams or your weaker characters, since the blessings themselves are quite strong. Do remember that if you do not like the events that you see right now and they're not up to your favor, feel free to use the refresh event option, of which you can do this up to 3 times before it goes to 0. Once you get past Act 3, remember that you can actually use the Rewind Act option if you selected the wrong cast or you messed up something along the way. And lastly, for certain acts, you can use the Abandon Challenge option once you have met the minimum requirement in order to clear the act. Okay, so for some tips in regards to the battles, that isn't much, but there is quite a few things that you can do. For the monolith defense thing, try to choose the Ruin Guard option or any sort of axe or enemies with like a very small one number so that it's easier for you to maintain the monolith thing. It's easier for you to take the aggro away from the monolith to make it easier for you to really meet the requirement and get that star clear. The Ruin Guard one is the easiest one by far because all you have to do is deal with like one Ruin Guard at a time and you don't even have to kill them if you don't mind waiting for about 2.5 minutes, but that's a recommendation that I can give. For the bounties floor, I think it was Act 9, I find that the Kairagis and the Eidolons are the easiest because they don't really move that much. I think Eidolons is pretty beneficial, granted that you can use Electro Charge, trigger some amount of Hyper Bloom, and also trigger Vaporize, so they're probably the easiest one to kill. Kairagis is going to be second best, and in all situations, there are going to be multiple fodder targets. Don't pay too much attention to these people, but if you do have Beidou in your team, she is going to be very, very good here because her burst is going to bounce between multiple enemies, and if you have Constellation too, your damage is going to skyrocket, so I do highly recommend saving Beidou for this floor. Now for the bosses, we do have the Jade Plume Terrashroom, the Thunder Manifestation, Ruin Serpent, and Coppelius. So the Terrashroom, there's not really much to say, just generally there's two different things to keep in mind. If you apply enough Electro to build up the bar, then he will enter like an aggravated Berserk state. He'll do some massive move between like one of the few options he has, and then it will be stunned for the next 20 seconds. This is especially good for you because it does have reduced resistance in this state, so try to take advantage of this and use it to your advantage for the DPS window that you are given. And of course, you can apply Pyro and it will shed, but there's not really any sort of benefits here unless you have Beidou for some reason and you want to get the extra mushrooms. But other than that, there's not really much to say about this boss. He has very high Dendro resistance, but it's like whatever. The buffs are going to make you strong enough to kill him fast enough. For the Thunder Manifestation, there's only one tip I can really give, is that when it's about to do the spinning attack, you want to do things that allow you to face tank or prevent yourself from getting staggered whenever it begins to spin. Because what's going to happen is that it's not going to be moving far, it'll just like spin and stop right behind you. So it's easier for you to manipulate the position, and especially if you're playing a team that has circle impact like Bennett or Rosario, etc. just for example. Otherwise, pretty straightforward, just kill it and don't use Electro, you're going to be doing 0 damage. Now for the Ruin Serpent, there's only one real tip I can give. If it comes digging out, you want to be staying within this range as the footage is showing right now. If you are within this distance, you're able to bait the what I call the roly-poly attack, where it will just slam down on the floor and start rolling in like a certain radius. This is especially good because you will prevent him from going back down to the ground and digging, which means this is a free DPS window that you can take advantage of. Otherwise, there's only just a few moves that he's going to be doing where he has like certain weak spots. There's not really anything I can really give an advice on to stun him consistently. Just try to use characters with AoE damage, maybe overloaded teams would be pretty good. But yeah, otherwise just straightforward, do rinse and repeat, and you move on to the next part. So Coppelius is probably the most trickiest one, but also not really that much. It does have a cryo shield, so there's a few things you can do to break it. Obviously, pyro characters like Bennett, Shangling, or anyone else are going to break the cryo shield with ease whenever it does the climax move. Otherwise, Wuxia characters can also break the shield for things that meet the current elemental requirement. Oran's skill, Chevreau's skill is one of the few things that can work, or you can get the Quest Sword, the Sword of Nazism Crow, of which you can swap it to the Wuxia mode in the Anapauses at this location. But otherwise, I don't think there's really anything else to talk about, and I think that's it for this video. I will be uploading my personal run running 4-star Oni option except for the main cast, and hopefully if you guys are interested in checking my full run to see how I tackle it with all my build characters, then feel free to go check it out later and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or any issues that you're facing, feel free to leave it down in the comments and I will try to help you with the best of my abilities. Otherwise, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!